Hello, first tonight, 2 charges against a man from Essex who was controversially arrested with the use of CS spray have been withdrawn.
The arrest of Alan Lethbridge earlier this month in Brentwood is being investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. The officers involved have been placed on restricted duties. In a moment, we'll be looking at the growing numbers of complaints made against officers in our region. But first, this report from Debbie Tubby.
Alan Lethbridge in the grey suit arrived at court this morning with his mother, sister and solicitor, charged with common assault, drunken disorderly and threatening behaviour. This was the night he was arrested in Brentwood High Street. We don't know what happened before the cameras started rolling, but from this footage it's clear he was forced onto the bonnet of this police vehicle. An officer then takes out a canister of CS spray and aims it just inches away from his face. Police guidelines say the spray shouldn't be used at a distance of less than 1 metre, unless the nature of the risk to the officer means that this can't be avoided. He's then pulled back onto the floor. Alan Lethbridge spoke just 3 times during the 4-minute hearing to confirm his name, date of birth and his address of Cone Drive in Essex. He'll appear here again on the 20th of October. He left court after hearing the drunken, disorderly and threatening behaviour charges have been withdrawn. His charge of common assault on a paramedic is to be reviewed. The case is being investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. Essex Police Force is carrying out its own internal investigation. Debbie Tubby, BBC Look East, Basildon Magistrates Court.
Figures released today show more than 3,000 complaints were made against police forces in our region last year. Amelia.
Nationally, the number of complaints against the police has risen by 8%. So let's see how some of our own forces measure up against that figure. And at just a quick glance, you can see how Essex stands out with 34%. Only one other force that was bigger than that, and that was Lincolnshire. But what's interesting is the number of complaints against Essex Police that were actually upheld, 17%. And once again, that's higher than the national average of just 10%. So why the sharp increase in Essex? Our chief reporter, Kim Riley, is at police headquarters in Chelmsford.
Amelia, these are very striking figures, with complaints against Essex Police now topping 900 a year. And one's bound to ask if that's in any way connected with the kind of tough, no-nonsense policing they've been pioneering here. Back in May this year, the Laindon area of Basildon became the focus of what police described at the time as a unique crime-cutting experiment. Officers armed with cameras followed prolific burglars for a week in what was called in-your-face policing. The targets warned if you don't like it, stop offending. It followed a similar experiment in nearby Vange last year and had an immediate, if temporary, impact in cutting local crime. In Laindon shopping centre today, some praised the officers on the front line. Others were highly critical.
I mean, I've seen them do things to known offenders, which I don't really like. They may be offenders, but they don't deserve the way they get treated sometimes.
Most of them are in cars, trying to look for someone to nick for speeding. And you've got people dealing drugs and God knows what else.
Whenever I've called them in the past, it's always been either a phone call back later or them turning up 2 hours later. What they see as important is not what's important to us.
If we'd needed to call them for any reason, you know, they've been very good.
I think they have a lot to put up with, especially around this area. He's a bit violent around there, so, yeah, do a good job.
I think you could do with more policing on the estates than that, to be honest with you, with muggings and that that go on, do you know what I mean, drugs and things like that. So.
They just stop and search you for no reason, and, you know, if you've got a hood on your head, that's it, you know, you just singled out.
They come to my home address and they spray me with CS gas for no reason at all. We end up in Broomsfield Burns unit for 5 days. They're heavy-handed.
The force is overseen by the County Police Authority. Its job to support and challenge in the public interest.
Policing is sometimes a bit of a dirty business and complaints will follow. The percentage of those that are upheld is still too high. I accept that. 17% is too high, but we're working with the force on the police authority to ensure that that number will be reduced over time.
The Police Federation says the figures reflect the growing pressures on police officers. It called for better training in dealing with challenging situations. Well, clearly here they're taking all this very seriously. They say the number of complaints, though, are still relatively low when set aside the 440,000 incidents that their officers attend each year. They say they're determined to provide a really good service to the public, and what that means to them is more police on the beat, more criminals behind bars. Amelia.
Thanks, Kim. But not all of our forces saw an increase in complaints. In fact, numbers were actually down in 2 of our forces. In Hertfordshire, complaints fell by 14%, and in Bedfordshire, they were down by 12%.
Quite simply, what we've done is we've taken the learning out of the complaints received from the members of the public and transferred that back into the workforce, i.e. police officers and police staff are aware why public make complaints and they've addressed their behaviour. It's about being polite to people, being courteous and actually keeping people informed. That's where the majority of the complaints come from.
For more details on all of those figures out today, you can go to ipcc.gov.uk.
The row over a school dinner lady sacked in Essex has taken a new twist. Carol Hill was dismissed after telling parents that their child had been bullied during playtime. Now it's claimed that one of the alleged bullies is the son of a governor at the school.
Carol Hill, who's 60, lost her job for an apparent breach of confidentiality. She told the parents of 7-year-old Chloe David how she'd been tied up and whipped by a group of boys. One of them, it's now alleged, was the son of parent governor Catherine Spicer. So does that throw the school's judgment into question?
People will always have their suspicions. That's entirely up to them. I would like to think that the people that are governors at this school have done the honourable thing and done it based on what they've been told, not on any sort of loyalty to one of their co-governors.
It's understood Catherine Spicer played no part in the disciplinary hearings. We tried to contact her today without success, but she has been quoted elsewhere as saying she has no comment to make on the case. Today, Chloe's father, Scott, seen here on the right of this group, gave his reaction in a BBC radio interview.
It's a shame that this didn't come out before the hearing, because maybe that would have had a different outcome, or a different schools panel, or another school convening a panel to hear what had happened.
The case has divided opinion. Some parents stick by the school. Others, including the former leader of its parent-teacher association, who's just stepped down, say it's been handled appallingly. Ivan Dyer, too, is critical of the way Carol Hill has been treated. So what should happen now?
We need an outside inquiry. We need somebody to come in and look at this right from the first instance when this attack occurred and actually go through it and then make everybody certain that it's been done fairly, because it's always going to be a doubt in somebody's mind that it wasn't.
There have been calls for school head Debbie Crabb to stand down. Today, education officials said no one would make any comment on these latest revelations. Carol Hill is still planning to appeal. Kevin Birch, BBC Look East in Essex.
The son of a man who fell from a first-floor window just days after undergoing a heart operation is making an official complaint against the hospital. Papworth Hospital in Cambridgeshire says an investigation is underway. And Anna Todd has this report.
This photo shows Troy Conway wired up in intensive care. He had undergone a successful triple heart bypass operation mid-September. 4 days later, in an apparently confused state, the 79-year-old walked to a first-floor window at Papworth Hospital and fell out. He landed 20 feet below, breaking his back, his pelvis, his leg and his heel. Mr Conway's son, Glenn, has taken time out from his job as a tree surgeon to visit him.
Why did a window where confused people maybe have access to, why can it open enough for somebody to tumble through it? Imagine the concern of the nurses in the building opposite who witnessed it but were unable to do anything quickly enough. If he'd have landed on his chest, what might the scene have been?
In a statement, Stephen Bridge, the chief executive of Papworth Hospital, described Mr Conway's fall as an isolated but extremely regrettable incident. He said a full investigation has been launched. Mr Bridge also added that staff here are in close contact with those at Addenbrooke's hospital, as Mr Conway's recovery is of prime importance. To add insult to injury, Mr Conway, who lives in Bedford, waited 5 days for his operation at Addenbrooke's hospital due to a lack of intensive care beds. He's now said to be recovering well.
He was well liked around Bedford, very active, karaoke, the sort of person that would have done other people's shopping, so a very active man, well in control of all his affairs, very independent. I hope he's going to be that again.
Troy Conway's family say they will make an official complaint about what happened. They know he's lucky to have survived the fall. Anna Todd, BBC Look East, Cambridgeshire.